It is Sunday night. It is time for another edition of the Auburn Experience podcast. This time we're doing the live recording of episode 31. I'm here and we got a special guest. So let's get into all the things related to Auburn starting right now. War Eagle Auburn family, War Eagle E2C Network family, thank you so much for joining us and being part of our little family within the Auburn family. I am your host, as always, Kyle, alongside me. Not my normal co-host yet again. He's somewhere out there in the city, but we've got a familiar face that we are happy to have here on episode 31 as a guest co-host, Mr. AJ Richardson. AJ, what's going on?
Hey, not much. Excited to talk about Auburn. I've seen you and Austin do these. I'm excited to take a little bit step back from what I normally do, which is the No Huddle football podcast. So we dive really deep into Auburn football.
Yep.
But this will be a step back. And what is the experience? What is the Auburn experience like? And I love the idea of this because as an Auburn fan, there's so much more than just even football. And that's coming from a very football-minded guy. So excited to talk about things.
It's like he was ready to roll. He had his speech ready and everything. So we'll start this recording here in about 4 minutes or so. As most of you know, we like to spend the first 5 minutes letting people gather into the chat. I'm also going to ask a big favor of all of you. I did a little bit of a scheduling mix-up, so a lot of you are probably even noticed that when we got started tonight. You're 9 o'clock and you're like, where's the actual show going to be? So do us a favor if you can, especially if you're watching the replay so people know to come back and watch this. Smash the like button. Check in right now. Post where you're watching from, your city, state, international, all of that good stuff. Please do let us know that you're here. We already got some people checking in. Miss Angela Crotchfelt. I'm assuming that is our pitchers family. I'm just going to throw that out there. Maybe not. It might be a step out, but Angela, if that's true, let us know. And welcome regardless to the show, hanging out with us tonight. So obviously do all those things. The traditional way we go throughout this is we have some scheduled topics. We won't interact a lot during the show, but if you guys have any comments or questions that you'd like for us to just address right here, you can. We will, or at least I will, do a segment after the live recording, doing just some more general discussion and hanging out with people. But AJ, did you think it would take 31 episodes for you to get an opportunity to be on here?
I didn't know. I think you had invited me one other time. So this is the first time I guess I've been able to join you.
Yeah, I probably did. We've known for a long time that Austin was going to have to take a leave of absence. It's one thing to have a child come into the world. It's another thing to have twins.
Yeah.
So I actually texted with him this week and I knew what the answer was going to be. I was like, so how are we feeling about this week? He said, I'm going to need another week. And I was like, I'm just throwing it out there, just trying to see how you were feeling and all that kind of stuff. So we'll address that in the show too when we get to that. The other thing that I don't want to get down in the dumps to start off with this, Austin, but I've been thinking about this a lot, especially given, and we're not going to assume talk about this a lot during the podcast episode, but this is with what happened with baseball this weekend. This has kind of been a real down year for Auburn athletics in general. We've had some high moments of some other things, but I feel like this has been one of those low bar years where we've underachieved a lot. Is that a fair statement?
It feels like that. I think the bright spot is just a new football coach.
Yeah.
And Brees Pearl, he took us back to the NCAA tournament.
Yeah.
Volleyball
did well.
There were a handful of things, and even we'll mention this and probably go into more detail. Yeah. The questions, getting second. Is it the national championship? I'm sure that we all hoped. No. Right. But getting second is nothing to bat your eye at. So there are aspects of some of the sports not performing up to what we've seen in the past, but right. It is kind of what it is. And you have ups and down years of athletics. And I hope football and other sports will kind of kick back into gear and get back to where we know Auburn can be.
Right. And when I say that, it's not necessarily saying this is a bad year, but when Clint and I have talked about this concept a lot, we almost wish we had done the legwork to already have this discussion, like quantifying how was this year better than this year, so that subsequent years we could actually talk about, well, this one was below this one. I would say this one has underperformed just based on some expectations, even outside. I mean, I'm excluding football from a lot of that because no one knew what was coming with this football season. I think it probably got worse than we had thought it would be. But it's just been one of those years, I think, that you really have to latch on to the collective Auburn experience, the show, and then really go with it from there. So I think that'll do it for our opening discussion. I'm going to bring the reminder up here for everybody right now as you're watching. Let's see, where did it go? I had it ready and now it's gone from me. Yeah, you'll see this down here ticking past me and Austin. Please stay after the show if you can, if nothing else, to hang out with me, Austin. I keep saying Austin. Here's the problem. At least when Clint was a guest host, Thomas was a guest host, they have different letters in the starting of their name. This is going to be a problem saying AJ and Austin this entire.
Yeah. If it helps, you could call me Austin J or something. You start Austin, be like AJ. I mean, Austin J.
Just know that it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So as we go throughout the show, please keep in mind, hang out in the comments with each other. Leave some of those. We may come back and address some of those after we get done recording about 30 minutes here. But enjoy the show, and we hope that you guys enjoy another edition of episode 31, the Auburn Experience. You ready, AJ?
Yeah, let's do it.
3, 2, 1. David Housel said it best: the whole of the Auburn experience is the thing that we experience, and it has a variety of things. Yes, it's all about our sports, but it's more than just that. It's about people, places, and things. At its core, though, it is about our sports, it is about our culture, and it is about our family. And because it is about family, which means we've got to have people here to make up that family. That's why I'm here, your host as usual, Kyle Loomis, and my co-host as normal, Austin Scott, is still out on sabbatical of sorts, raising some twins that just came into the world. And I'm sure we're not done talking about that. We are hoping to have him back next week. But because of this and anticipating this, we've had some great personalities come join in for the last couple of times we've been doing this. Got another one tonight, a very familiar voice, maybe first time face that you've ever seen here at E2C Network. I'd like to welcome AJ Richardson, co-host of the No Huddle podcast on E2C Network. AJ, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. I appreciate it. I've been following along as you've kind of gone down this journey. Being a very football-focused show in No Huddle, I've really enjoyed, digging into football, and that's kind of my love and my passion. But I also love to step back and view what is Auburn. What makes up Auburn? Does it includes food? It includes the other sports besides football, and I'm really excited to get to talk about all of that. Even things that are slightly not typically Auburn, like Buc-ee's or things like that may not you think when you go to Auburn, but hey, Buc-ee's is in Auburn now. Things like that will make and kind of start to change slightly, what Auburn is. And yep. I think for a lot of it, people are a little scared of change, but there's a lot of great change going on and excitement that goes on with any kind of change as well.
Right. Well, so here's the great thing about Buc-ee's. We're not done talking about it, folks. Most of you are rolling your eyes at this point because you're like, God, this guy talked all about Buc-ee's last week. Austin and I think that is one thing that I'm saving for me and him. You've at least gotten to mention it here. And so I wanted to give you the opportunity just to at least say you talked about Buc-ee's. I mean, did you ever think that this would be happening in an Auburn situation?
Not necessarily at Auburn, because it seems like Buc-ee's is kind of like one of those, just like, you drive down to the beach, you see it, or you go out to Texas and you see it. And I thought, oh, little old Auburn, I don't know if we'd ever get a Buc-ee's. Like, even when the rumors started popping up, right, I didn't think necessarily they would materialize.
Well, and think about it too. If most of the ones you've already been to, maybe I shouldn't say most, but you would think, well, maybe it's supposed to be right next to, if not inside, a major city. But most of the ones that I've been to, they're somewhat in between major stopping points, which I think makes perfect sense for this type of place if it's a stopping destination at this point. So I'm excited for it. As I've mentioned, we're not going to spend this episode talking a lot about it. We're probably the first episode back. We have Austin. He and I will just gush about Buc-ee's. More content, even beyond that, coming out there. I do want to throw this out there. We mentioned that Austin will be back hopefully next week if everything works according to plan. If not, you'll see another special guest here. That's the good news. I do want to address the bad news, and then not to brush past it, but also just to kind of not linger on it too much. The Auburn community obviously is this little village on the plains, but there are many surrounding communities, and I think this one is kind of on the way outskirts. But there was obviously a tragedy with a shooting in Dadeville, not too far from Auburn, between Auburn and Lake Martin, essentially. And there's people in Dadeville that very much are connected with Auburn stuff. So obviously this seems cliche at times, but I obviously wanted to say that our prayers go out to everyone that's been involved with that. And just a reminder for everybody, this is my personal statement. This is not, AG is not endorsing this, but I'm going to say it from my personal viewpoint and statement on this. I hope everybody will take a deep breath and stop pushing agendas and just realize the fact that lives were lost. And that's really the only thing that matters right now. And so I hope we can sit in that and just acknowledge that a community that's connected pretty closely to Auburn is suffering right now. And so our prayers go out to them very much. So now that we've covered that and at least addressed one of our outskirts, the Auburn family, let's talk about something else, and a bit of good and a bit of bad, some things ending in the sports world for Auburn. Darian Goborn, let's start there. She is now officially done after a 5th year with the Auburn Tigers and got to go as a single participant to potentially win a single national championship out there on the biggest stage in gymnastics. And even though she came away without the championship, I was so happy to see her get that one more time. And I imagine you feel the same way.
Yeah. Every time, if you've watched Darian Goborn, which if you're an Auburn fan, I hope you have. If you haven't, please go watch some highlight of one of her floor routines this year, previous ones, because it is truly a entertaining piece that I'm so glad that people really enjoy watching. And Darian just being kind of a showman, bigger personality than sometimes it seems in life. Like they're just bigger than life. And I think Darian is definitely one of those that people latch onto and said, wow, that's awesome. I love her story. I love how she has come and really made a name for herself. Been here for 5 years? That's pretty awesome.
It's a long time.
That's a long time, especially in gymnastics world, where you probably get them for 4 years. And if you get them all 4 years, that'd be awesome. But, it's really amazing.
Right. Yeah, I'm going to miss her a lot. And I think you and I off screen before we hit the record, quote unquote, button for this part of the show. This is why those of you that are listening should always come and watch the live recording, because there's things before and after. We were having like a general discussion about things, quote unquote, underperforming this year in terms of athletics. And I think a lot of people had expectations for gymnastics because Suni was back, because Darian was back, because XYZ, all these different athletes were back. And not that we were a shoo-in for a national title. I think a lot of people were like, oh, Auburn's going to be there just like they were last year, because basically everybody's back and then some. And I think a lot of context was missing in that, some key elements, I think it's Olivia Graves is her name, was supposed to compete this year, and she had to sit out because of an injury, who a lot of people talk about she's the next best thing at Auburn, and there's plenty of other people at Auburn's gymnastics team that are the next best thing, just to be honest with you. But it is over now, and the saddest thing is that we'll have to say goodbye to obviously Suni, but obviously Darian Goborn, who I think it's interesting when you think about it. You would think Suni would have all the star power, but Darian, to me, is still the star of that program, even with an Olympic athlete in your midst. That was Darian's program, and it's really cool to watch and see. Very briefly, let's mention this as well. The Auburn Equestrian team, unfortunately, comes up just one match short of a national title after winning a 5th consecutive SEC title. Made it past that scary first round the last 2 seasons, getting knocked out in the first round, and made it to the national championship and lost to SMU. So not underperforming by any stretch of the imagination, AJ, as we just talked about, but Equestrian just continues to at least be relevant, if not almost dominant every single year.
Yeah, they are a fun one. My parents recently went to watch them, and they were just talking about how educational it is. So if you haven't gone to an equestrian meet, I think Auburn Elvis does a great job of talking about it as well. But one of the things that my parents learned very quickly was, what is an equestrian meet? What are the events? How are they scored? And that piece is kind of pretty cool. But even bigger, take a bigger step back. This team and previous teams have kind of been in the running for a national championship. We have plenty of them to go around for equestrian. And this one, I was looking at some of at least at the beginning, we fell pretty far behind in our national championship run in our final meet. And we ended up battling back, almost came back and won against a very highly ranked SMU. And, that's just part of it. Sometimes you get caught back and you just can't battle all the way back. But hey, the battling is honestly the important part. And guess what? Those girls, would it be awesome if they got the national championship? Absolutely. But they'll also remember that their team battled when they were down really far early in this match.
Yeah, obviously very disappointing to see them come so close, battle back, but very proud. They walk away with an SEC title. Yeah. They walk away still being relevant in the national title picture for equestrian again. So there's nothing to be ashamed of for Greg Williams, these ladies, and this program and this fan base, because we're still that big of a deal when it comes to that. We're obviously expecting and hoping for big things again next year. And we appreciate, as you mentioned, Auburn Elvis being out there covering for everybody, but especially he does some work here for us at E2C Network with the War Horses podcast. So check that out if you have not. Let's move into our first big segment tonight. And we did take last week off because not only was A-Day, the opening of Buc-ee's. I told you we were going to mention it like thousands of times. Easter weekend, the most awful like Saturday of rain ever. I mean, it would seem like a statue unveiling. It was just so much going on. So there was no way, given Austin still being out, that I was going to be able to ask or even expect someone on the Easter weekend to do a show. So we are back from that week off and can finally talk about A-Day. And this is honestly, AJ, this is why I wanted you here specifically. Not because I couldn't find anybody else, as I told Clint. It gets under his skin every time I tell him that. I'm like, you know that joke's coming. Just know every single time. So you actually were sought out, AJ. Just know that. Not like Clint. And you have the same last name, so go figure.
Yeah, but we're not related.
Which is just the oddest thing in the world. Anyway, and you're both Auburn fans. And that's still a common name.
And we went to college at the same time. So
there's so many commonalities between the two of you. It's scary. And I think you're both lying about not being related to each other. And it's done in the certain light when you stand next to each other in the shadow of Jordan hair. I'm like, they're somehow related. They're just not telling us. This is not the segment about how Clint and AJ are related. This is about A-Day weekend. We're finally getting a chance a week later to talk about it. I want to hear about your experience. I've shared a little bit about my experience on various things around E2C Network already, and I'll do a little bit more here. But since you're our special guest, talk to me about what you saw, you experienced at A-Day, and the storm of the century that it was, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think leading up to it, I think it was a little lackluster of like, even I feel like the media wasn't necessarily pushing it. Or there wasn't, a lot of players saying, come join us at A-Day, or even Hugh Freeze to some extent, like kind of not like, hey, you can come. It's not going to be a final product. Obviously it's A-Day, but there just wasn't a lot of excitement. And then you build on top of that, all of the kind of tough stuff of weather, A-Day, like just all the A-Day event stuff,
right?
And Masters, and then Easter, obviously. And all of those really kind of built upon itself that there were lots of just pulling around of people's focus. And then it's just dreary and people didn't want to come out. And you're like, okay, cool, whatever. But it's still a time. It's the coach's first time to get their squad out there. And from a performance standpoint, I think everybody's expectations were hopefully tempered if they weren't already. Just like
they're never tempered enough,
no,
Austin.
no.
Like the people that we're talking about, this was such a abysmal. What did you expect?
Yeah.
Like I still don't get people that think that way. I'm not going to get on that soapbox. So go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. And that's just like the nature of it. You think, oh, spring, you got most of your team on campus, you're ready to go. Let's start throwing the ball around, scoring tons of touchdowns. And we did score 24 points, which I think is pretty good considering the circumstances. But when it comes down to like the X's and O's, I was like, all right, there are pieces here that we can obviously build on. And that's the important part. It wasn't like, oh, wow, we are in a lot of deep trouble with this. I mean, how many times I saw the offensive line pushing the defensive line around and opening up holes was so encouraging to me. We have not seen that consistently happen for a very long time, it feels like. And there were just a lot of pieces like the running back situation where you're like, wow, we legitimately probably have 3 guys already on campus that could be starters at most schools. And yet we're going to probably have some depth there, which I think is good. You just never know with running backs and how that all shakes out throughout the season with injuries or whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
And just the overall, I don't know, just the excitement. There was definitely some excitement around Hugh Freeze.
Right.
And I wish there were more fans. If it was a prettier day, I think there would have been a lot more fans.
I agree with you, AJ. So I'm not gonna sit here and say it was gonna be a hardcore, one of the best 8A attendance. I just think he even tempered the expectations without the rain and stuff given into that equation. He said, folks, we're not going to show you a lot because that's one of our biggest things that we have going for us this year is nobody knows exactly what to expect from what we're going to do here at Auburn. They've seen my tape, but they haven't seen what I'm going to do here. So we can't give that up. The one advantage that we have in a very tumultuous situation we find ourselves in, trying to pick up the pieces from another transition in a 2-year time frame. So I really think that if this had been better weather, you probably sit somewhere in the 30 to 40,000 attendance. Yeah. What was the attendance? Do you remember?
They said like 12,000. Yeah, something like that. I was like,
no, we didn't break 10,000 on that. Yeah. Maybe that was tickets sold. Now that's true, right? But here's the thing. I'm just going to throw this out there, AJ. Not all us, hoity-toity people get to sit up in the covered areas like you and people close to you. So those of us that just have to suffer out there in the elements, I can understand. But you getting to sit up there, having the audacity to send a picture to the group. Hey, happy to be here at 8A, sitting here out of the wind, out of the rain. So just thanks for that.
Well, I got to thank my grandparents. They have donated lots of money, thankfully, to the university, and that was kind of my reward, I guess. But it's not that I'm trying to flaunt that. Like I'm obviously not. I think it was just I said it not even thinking, and
I knew you didn't. I knew you didn't. That's why I made a big deal about it. I was like, this is so not what AJ means, but I'm going to make a big deal about it just because. And I'm sitting out here miserable because I was at that point. I was going to stick it out with my poncho on out in the open. And then I just said, nope, I'm going up to where some overhang is. And I'm still getting wet, but it was awful. So you guys have talked about on the No Huddle podcast. Please do check it out if you haven't. You can find it on all podcast apps, our main E2C Network feed with all the podcasts that's on that one. And even on the other E2C Network YouTube channel. Description links are down there for all these things where you can listen to those there as well. I would recommend that for you listeners out there who haven't heard their analysis of A-Day. That, and I say they, AJ and Jared, his co-host. They do a good job. And so please do go check their analysis out. So we won't really go into detail about that. But anything else from A-Day that you can take away from, or whether it's football related or not? I know you probably got in and got out, but what else from A-Day that you might want to mention, if anything?
I was very encouraged by our special teams.
Yeah.
And I think that the special teams piece of it was definitely lackluster under the previous administration. And so I'm very excited to see, especially with, Alex McPherson. I mean, you saw him. Yeah. Did he miss like a 50-yarder? Yeah.
In the rain, in the wind. I mean, come on.
You're in the rain. It's there's so many elements against you. And he had enough power. He just missed it just a little bit wide. And it's like, okay, whatever. But it just shows you that I think we are going still down like a positive route of special teams and kind of getting better as we go in special teams. And that's the part that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but it was a good confirmation that I think we'll be okay. I think we will.
I always say this before we start live recordings. We don't pay attention to the chat a lot, but I did see a comment pop up that I want to address because I was just thinking this, that yes, special teams, especially this year, it's a good point you bring up, can be the difference in a lot of games. When you are in a situation that we find ourselves in, with a lot of transition, our next topic we're about to hit in just a matter of minutes here, the transfer portal, going through transitions in every facet of this program. You have got to take advantage of the little things, special teams, extra points, punting, coverage, and then obviously taking care of the ball and tackling. If Auburn can come in out of this A-Day this summer being more fundamentally sound, taking care of those other things like special teams, and giving enough time where we're not making these other mistakes that make the situation even harder time for the defense and the offense to come along, we could have a surprising year. But still temper the expectations, folks. Coach Freeze has tried his best. And if I value a coach when they say things and they mean it, and he said that leading up to A-Day, and boy, was he right, temper your expectations, because you didn't hardly see anything except the ball run. One pass, though, which was Robbie Ashford to an individual who's in the transfer portal now. So yeah, we'll mention that in a little bit. But overall, just my interpretations of the weekend, that was obviously not what it could have been. Performance from the football team, just overall experience of that weekend. And hopefully next time around, we're having a much more exciting, complete, holistic 3, maybe 4 days that you could have on the plains of Auburn, getting back together in what to me is almost like a homecoming 2.0. So we'll wait and see next year. And when year comes back around, we'll see how much better, if it is. Our last topic tonight. It is the thing that in one instance, everybody will love, but it's also the thing in the other instance that everybody will lament. When it works for you, it's great. When it's not doing exactly what you wanted to do, wow, crybabies on social media will just have at it. The transfer portal, AJ. The transfer portal's been here for what, 2 years now, maybe?
I think it's like 2 full years.
2 full years?
But there's been changes as we've gone. And obviously this is another kind of iteration of what it is. And so, yeah, there's just, coaches, players are all trying to figure it out.
And so that's one problem that this has, whether it was NIL, because both these things kind of came about at the same time. The transfer portal, NIL, a lot of it was, I've heard it described, and I forget who to quote on this, but shoot, ready, aim is they basically just do something to make a response, right? And to try to say that they're doing something without having these stipulations, these considerations. At least that's how it seems for the transfer portal and stuff. And so I think that's where the frustration comes in. So, but when it works for you, it does. So what I would like for us to discuss is this. I'd like for us to talk about the good things and the bad things that have happened thus far, not just in football, but for a lot of things in Auburn sports. And I had to write down a list before we start here. So let's give you a list of what, as of the recording on Sunday evening of this podcast, that we know of have transferred out of football. Desmond Tisdale, Cameron Brown, Jeffrey Imba, Tavares Dawson. AJ, I would love for you to give some thoughts on those names and anything you take away from the initial departures of the transfer portal for Auburn football.
Yeah, it's just the world I think we live in now. I mean, I'm a very loyal person when it comes to just about anything. And, if I was a college athlete, I'd probably stay at whatever university I had originally committed to. But that's not the reality of what it is now. And you just see these players like Imba, Dawson, Tisdale, Cam Brown, and you're like, wow, these were names, when they came to Auburn, pretty highly talked about guys. And for most of them, they've had pretty limited, time to play at Auburn. They had, they've been here, but they haven't made as many plays, catches, whatever it is they're doing. And you look at even somebody like Tavares Dawson, and I was like, he was one of Jared and my guys, especially in the wide receiver room, to watch, because we were thinking, wow, this could be another guy to really make the depth better at wide receiver. And then you look at what he did last year. He only had 2 catches for 30 yards.
Yep.
And you're like, that puts in perspective, did he have that 40-yard catch? That was the wow moment. That was the biggest pass. That was the biggest play that we had. But like everything else is kind of just showing him like we probably need, and this is kind of the hard part of the transfer portal. Guys have to leave to open up spots for the transfers to come in. And at this point, from what I've kind of heard, Auburn has like 90 to 93-ish kind of scholarship positions, and you got to get that down. Mm-hmm. So by the time Auburn comes in the fall, we got to get that back down to a number. I think it's 85. And so you have to have players leave in order to have more come in. So this is, we just started this yesterday, the transfer portal opening up, and it's through April 30th. And I think these guys are just the start of it. And just to set your expectations, and it's going to be hard, seeing a lot of guys like this that are big names probably leave.
Yeah.
And that's going to be hard because a lot of these players had a lot of high hopes. We had hopes for them. And so to see that kind of, move on, maybe to a different school, hopefully to a different school if they are in the transfer portal. But we've also seen guys like Dawson, who he put his name in October, came back, played the spring. Now he's back in it. And you're thinking it could happen again. One of these guys like Imba, I think he's very good. I think he'll find a spot. But it would be pretty cool, a few months later, we found out Imba takes his name out of the transfer portal. So
do you really think that's going to happen, though?
It may. I feel like that's kind of the outlier, though.
Yeah. I don't get the feeling that Imba's coming back. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. That one was probably, if you want to talk about being shocked, and I was doing my best whenever I was on here at E2C Network or wherever, talking to people, prepping people, get ready. I mean, you're about to see a lot of people leave, no matter the sport, because this is the transfer portal. I mean, we're right here a day after the spring part of the transfer portal just opened up. People are going to leave. People are going to be coming in, this is just get ready, prepare yourself. But I think a lot of us had some maybe names in mind, and maybe some of the other ones are ones that you thought about. But Jeffrey Imba was one that I think a lot of people outside of those that are quote unquote in the know, were surprised by. And I understand that because he was a guy that seemed like he was up and coming, probably one of the gems of the Harsin era, one of the few things that people will probably acknowledge that was a good thing or good gets. And so it hurts to see that go. So we'll sit here and wait, see what happens with the rest of this transfer portal cycle. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about it here on this podcast or anything else we do with the E2C Network. But I did want to also mention other aspects of the transfer portal, other sports, some good and bad. Right now, Auburn basketball is in the middle of what's a nice way of putting it, AJ, changeover of the guard is probably, and that's a play on words. I just thought about it with the loss of several names, Yohan Traore, Wendell Green. There was speculation if Alan Flanagan was going to leave, and then he was on the roster again. I still don't understand what really is going on with that situation, and there's more to come. Good thing Denver Jones has transferred in. By all accounts, speculation-wise, looks to be what we need to fill some areas that we didn't do as well this year. That's a good thing. It's not really transfer portal, but kind of mixed within this. Peyton Marshall, the 2024 center, decommitted at that time. And then you've got a bunch of other names that are apparently close to making decisions that we maybe by the time you're watching or listening to this have already happened. So I want to open it up to you, AJ, thoughts on maybe basketball stuff, if you have any, and one in particular too, the discussion and rumor of Devin Cambridge returning to the Auburn Tigers. I still just, for my own safety of not getting my hopes up about that type of feel-good story, am not putting bank on that. And I'm probably going to be wrong, and people can show this to me and say, wow, you were wrong on that one. But thoughts on basketball situation right now with the transfer portal and maybe even a little bit of Devin Cambridge?
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously affected basketball. I think you see it, quote unquote, less in basketball.
Yeah.
Just because there's less people on the roster. You see it a lot in football. It feels like during the transfer portal for football, it feels like every day or every other day somebody's leaving. And it's just kind of the reality of it. Basketball, much less. Your rosters are much less. And it is tough. You know, you have guys that you like Peyton Marshall, a 4-star, 7-foot tall guy, and you have high hopes of him because you you have to have somebody like that. I come back to your kind of your final thought about Cambridge. I would love to see Cambridge potentially come back.
It's a feel good story, right?
It would be so good. Because wasn't Cambridge in one of which team did he transfer to?
He went to Arizona State to play with his brother for a year. Yeah. And I saw people like downplaying this and like, guys, just don't get so excited about it. Don't act like that's the coolest story. I mean, it is a cool story. If that's what happens. You transferred, people gave you crap for leaving. You went to play with your brother and then you came back. I mean, I don't know that that's necessarily what he planned to do, but if it works out the way, it's just a cool story. And he came back to us, come back home into the family. That'd
be so cool. And you could tell while he was at Auburn, it's just like a lot of these players, they really enjoyed their time. They enjoyed the teammates. If he comes back, there will still be a good number of teammates that he's played alongside. And I don't know. He was a fun one. I mean,
he's got bounce for days, man. Yeah. I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'd love to see that happening again. So listen, I'm going to be all over that if it happens. I can't bring myself to believe it's going to happen just for my own protection, for my little Auburn heart to be burst. Yeah. And what better selling point for Auburn? We're so good. People that leave come back. Like players in the transfer portal. That's how good. Like, think about that from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
All over that. You're welcome, Auburn Athletics. I've just done your job for you.
Well, it just reminds me when I was in college a little bit, I went to college with Cam Newton.
Just throw it out there. Just name drop. Okay. Why don't you?
Well, and then my senior year, 2015, Cam Newton to college, graduated. It just kind of reminds me, it's the feel good story, but it's also a good story of, players that, top caliber talent, obviously Heisman Trophy winner Cam Newton comes back to Auburn and decides to finish his degree, which most athletes, when they're that big, don't even care. They're not even going to do that. And I think that's a little piece of Auburn that just, it keeps you pulling back. I mean, even like we've seen some, Suni Lee at 8A. Like, who would have thought Suni Lee would have gone to an 8A game that was just gross? And she did.
But she doesn't care about Auburn. She's just here just to give her something to do, right? That's what everybody else was saying.
Just to pass the time between Olympics, apparently.
Right. Tim Hudson came back and did the same thing and stayed around to be an non-paid coach. He doesn't need to get paid. We all know that. We acknowledge all these things, but it's still the story remains the same here, is that Auburn is something special and different. And when professional athletes who don't need the money, don't need to have their degree, don't need to come back, and those that aren't professional yet, like in Devin, they at least can entertain the idea. That tells you there's something special and something different. And that's what we talk about here. Yeah. Last little thing. I know it's an odd transition just to kind of end on. We were on this transfer portal topic. Auburn has stole a Alabama player in the transfer portal, which is just in women's basketball, which is just hilarious to me. So congratulations to them. So there you go. A roundup of what's been happening in the transfer portal. Still plenty to talk about, and I'm sure it's changed a lot maybe by the time you're watching or listening this. AJ, we want to thank you so much for joining us as a guest co-host here on the Auburn Experience, episode 31. We have appreciated you, sir, and I'd love to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you'd like people to know about yourself, where they can find you.
Yeah, of course, I do the No Huddle podcast on the E2C Network. We love to cover all great things Auburn football. I know we kept things pretty high level, but on our show, we get a little bit more in depth, cover the big storylines of Auburn football. And there's just always a lot to talk about. Even during the doldrums of summer, we'll come at you with some fun off-season topics. So keep your head on a swivel for that. And then also, if you want to find me on Twitter, you can follow me at AJAYJAY_.
You can follow me on Twitter at Kyle Loomis24. We appreciate you all tuning in to episode 31 of the Auburn Experience podcast. Until we talk to you again, War Eagle.
War Eagle.
And we are out. All right. Great episode, AJ. Thank you so much. Those of you watching, stick around for a little bit. I'm going to stay around and talk a little bit. AJ, you're welcome to stay, but anything that you'd like to say in general, or do you need to run off from us?
I think I'm going to have to run, but
That's
I
fine.
appreciate it. And this was a great time. Enjoyed talking to you and W.C. Gardner. Saw that. So appreciate it.
He definitely is the substitute teacher. See, I have to be on my best behavior when the other people come in. When Austin and I get together, problems happen, but when other people have to be on, good behavior. So
yeah, absolutely.
All right, AJ, thanks so much for hanging out with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks. All right, bye.
Bye. All right, folks, thank y'all so much for hanging out with us tonight. I know we got off to a little bit of a rough start with my scheduling of the event. I know that probably confused a lot of you. This now becomes basically like a Wednesday night show. No call-ins, obviously, but if you have comments or questions that you'd like me to address, go ahead and post them in now. I try to stay up until about the hour point that we've been going live, but if it slows down, we'll kind of wrap things up. So I'll go through and look at some of these comments and questions you guys had during the show, but feel free to continue on the same commenting and dropping questions. And of course, smash the like button if you can, or if you haven't. Let's see here. Let's go scroll through here. In basketball, the premier programs are cannibalizing the smaller schools of their best players through the transfer portal. Yes, I think that, and I think it's in all the sports that's going to happen and is happening. However, what I do think is happening, I just don't know that we see it because the only coverage is going of X person from Kennesaw State going to Georgia, basketball, the bigger programs. That's the one that gets the most buzz and pizzazz. But there are transfers that are happening for smaller schools, the non-premier ones, as you would say here. So I think there is benefit to this. But of course, there's always going to be the rich get richer type of scenario in this type of setup. And that doesn't sit well with a lot of people. I understand it, but I prefer it that way. It gives everybody the opportunity. Yes, your opportunities might be a little bit different, maybe even a little bit harder, but you still have the opportunity to make it work. And I know that's a deeper conversation that we even need to have right here about not even football or basketball stuff, but yeah, that's kind of how I feel about it. Debbie said that we need a tall center, power forward, one of those two / or plus, and a strong backcourt. Pearl will get them right. Yeah, listen, Bruce Pearl has shown time and time again that he knows how to find the guys, recruit them, get them in, fill the needs. Just because this year didn't work out as best as we thought it was doesn't mean he's not good at that. Sometimes you miss, or they just didn't work out the way you thought that they would. WT, I saw this comment earlier. How badly is the loss of West Flanagan going to hurt the recruiting of basketball? I don't have any evidence to say that it is or isn't hurting, but I wouldn't think that. To me, this is just the way I think about it, right? I wouldn't think that the loss of West Flanagan is significantly hurting us one way or the other. And that is not a shot at West Flanagan. I think he's going to be, again, he was a great coach once before. He's going to Ole Miss, I believe, right? I think he'll one day be a great head coach again. And he's not going to stay here at his alma mater, but he's been under Pearl for enough time now. His son is maybe staying, or at least is on his, he's got one more year at best. So it makes sense to try something new at this point. I wouldn't read much into this. That's just my potential news. Yes, Corey, we did address this at the start of the show. Sad news out of Dadeville. And look, I'm going to go ahead and say this during the show. I shouldn't have to say these things because it wasn't meant in that way, but I'm going to. So it's here live during the show. I said a comment about something else not related to that, and made the reference that someone made a decision basically with the concept of shoot, ready, aim. Obviously that can be taken wrong, and that is not how I meant that. But so there you go. There's me addressing that awkward moment during the show that once I said it, I was like, poor choice, poor timing on that one, Kyle, once you already addressed the Dadeville situation. But yes, the Dadeville situation is very sad. Hits a little too close to home. And frankly, it hits a little too close to home anytime something like that happens. And I'll be honest with you guys, I haven't delved a lot into that situation just because it's happening. It is happening and being covered too often. And to me, it is just not something that I like to spend a lot of time on. Not to act like it doesn't happen, but just because it is another reminder of how dark and lost our world is. And there's one solution to that, and it's not policy. It's not changes to certain ways that people see I don't want to get into all that, but basically it's the change that we need to see in our country is at the heart and not anywhere else at this point. So I'll kind of leave it at that. And Debbie says she has some very close to my family lives on Lake Martin, I think is what you meant there. Let's see here. What else are you guys talking about? Who's going to replace Wes Flanagan? Ooh, it's a good question. I don't know that it's been announced. Well, if you think about who's here, the traditional two assistant coaches were Wes Flanagan and then Stephen Pearl. I don't think Stephen Pearl's going anywhere. And there was speculation he's going to be the heir apparent to Bruce. If that's true, we'll find out. I wouldn't be surprised if like Ira Bowman was already assistant head coach too. So there was three there. But what's his name? Bryant Smith, who's here as a student assistant. It would be interesting to see if he slides into that role. Right? It could be. And that could be one. Maybe it's someone outside that. Maybe Zep Jasper. No kidding. Zep has talked about that he wants to one day come back and coach at Auburn. It'd be cool if it happened this year, but I don't think it will. I would love to be wrong. We need to get back to adding a new practice court for Neville Arena. Something else positive to show the recruits. If you're talking about basketball recruiting, I don't think that we have to have something else positive. We got a lot positive going for us right now. Just losing a commit is not necessarily indicative of things going wrong. It could be indicative of things going very well. If a recruit that's coming in with no other sense, let me put it to you this way, coming in with the understanding that Janai Broom and at the time Babatunde, Dylan Cardwell will probably be gone, or maybe at best have one more year while you're here. But if that changes and we're bringing in someone that's going to be here for longer who might be the starting center as opposed to you, then it makes sense you go look somewhere else. So there's that at the way to think about it, frankly. But to your point, they're going to get to the Neville Arena situation. The problem is they've got a lot of other projects that are in the works right now with the baseball renovation, which needed to happen much before that. It's coming. It's been agreed to. It's going to happen. Let's see here. As long as it's not Barbie, I think we'll be fine with the new assistant coaches in basketball. I agree. It'd be funny, and it wouldn't be funny. I don't want Barbie anywhere near this program ever again. I try to steer clear of spewing hate towards even assistant coaches, and players, but there are a handful that you may be a decent person outside of the context of how you related to Auburn, but I'm just done with you in that context. Sonny Galloway, baseball is that. When you drag Auburn through the mud and you don't even have solid proof that something wrong was done to you, then you're in trouble with me. So Barbie, when he made the comment, you can't win here with Under Armour. That was so stupid. So stupid. That's when I knew. I was like, he's got to go. He's got to go. We're making excuses because of the apparel we wear. All right. Let's see here. In my eyes, you will definitely see Freeze and Philip Montgomery, the OC, go after a quarterback in the portal next month. How do you know they're not already doing that? I think they've been working whatever angle they can for anything. But I think us as fans, we've made up our minds that the quarterback is not here. That may not be true. The quarterback could be here already, the 3 that we have. And we're going to have to be okay with that and supportive of that if that's the reality. Now, as Hugh Freeze has said time and time again, if there is someone out there who fits our culture, what we need, and wants to be here, we're going to bring him in. I don't care what position it's at. And that's the way it should be. Doesn't matter if you have Cam Newton or, I'm trying to think. Well, I don't want to throw anybody in the bus. A non-favorable quarterback from the past. You bring in who wants to be here, who fits your culture, and who can potentially help you. That's it. So to your point, yes, I do think they'll investigate every avenue possible. But if they don't bring someone in, doesn't mean that's the end of the world too. Yeah, and there's a lot of news and reports. There's been this rumor circulating that Grayson McCall is going to come at the end of the summer, right as school starting or whatever. But much like with the Devin Cambridge story we talked about during the show, I've begun to protect myself and not even believe that's going to happen. Have we mentioned Buc-ee's in the last half hour? No, we have not. We're going to have to start. What is it? Putting a Buc-ee's jar over here. You know what? That would be a great thing. I might actually do that. So I think I've got a mason jar downstairs in our garage, and I'm going to put like a Buc-ee's sign on it. I got a sticker. Oh, no, that's Jessica's sticker. I'm going to try to come up. So we're going to have a Buc-ee's jar. Anytime someone mentions it on the show, we're going to fill it up with something. That's what we're going to do. We're going to make this work. It's going to be a thing. I promise. But trust me, we're going to be talking about Buc-ee's a lot. Just wanted to add that the Frank Thomas statue looks very cool. Happy for him. It does. It looks really, really good. I finally got to go back on the Buc-ee's day, the opening day, because I was still in town, and got to look at it in more favorable conditions. No rain. It wasn't completely sunny, but I shared some of those images out there if y'all haven't checked that out. And it looks really good. I'm really happy with it. I remember when the coaches' statues, that being Pat Shug and then Cliff Air, who's an administrator, were debuted. Especially with Shug's, from the distance I was at, there were some things that just appeared off. As time goes on, I was like, no, there was nothing wrong with them. But the second that one was unveiled, and maybe because we were all just happy to be out of the rain and get it over with, it looked great. It looks really, really good. I'm very happy with it. And I think Clint and I are going to get together and potentially talk about this in an episode coming up. I know I just knocked the screen. I'm sorry. But yeah, it was really cool. You love Robbie, but would love to see Holden catch on fire. I'm fine with that. I love them all. Here's what I want, and this is what every Auburn fan should want. You should want TJ Finley to just burst onto the scene this year, even if it proves us all wrong, because that means we're succeeding. So I don't care who it is. I want the best person out there, and I want them to succeed. And if they can't get it done after a reasonable amount of time comes, then we make a change. But I'm rooting for all these guys. And it's okay to have a preference. I get that. And I think most of the players understand that too. The beaver bites, you mean the beaver nuggets? The little, almost like, forget what you would call it, like the cereal, if it tastes like the cereal. Those are pretty good. We've eaten too many of those things at this point. You can have a trip to Buc-ee's as a subscription prize. So I would like give them a ride there. Is that what you're saying, Corey? I mean, I don't hate the idea. Maybe not this exact version of the idea, but listen, I would love to have Buc-ee's as a sponsor. I'm just going to put it out there. But from what I understand, they do not advertise because they don't need to. And I kind of admire that, to be honest with you. So Angela, so I was right. Zach is your son? I'm sorry, I don't mean to embarrass you and call you out, but I just want, anytime we get a player or a relative of a player in here, I want to give you a shout out and tell you thanks for letting us have your family as part of our Auburn family. There we go. So Angela, thank you so much for being here, and tell Zach that we love him and appreciate him. And I know that they're having a bit of a rough season right now, at least as things stand right now, but we're still pulling for them. WT, if you haven't seen Bo Barkley and the Big Hurt, you are missing out how those guys interact and their love for Auburn is special. I'm gonna agree with WT here wholeheartedly. You need to watch that special if you haven't, but you also need to watch, and why is it? I think it's called Rowdy, the Rowdy Gaines special on ESPN or SEC Network. The arguably Auburn's, other than Christy Coventry, our greatest swimming name, and Coach Marsh, who was the national championship coach winner. Go watch that. If you don't walk away thinking Rowdy Gaines deserves to be in the pantheon of Auburn athletics, then you weren't paying attention. You need to know Rowdy. You need to know Bo. You need to know Barkley. You need to know the Big Hurt. You need to know Rowdy. And you need to know Vicky Orr. You need to know Ruthie Bolton. You need to know Casey Cooper. All these names. So many good topics here. Who's the next to get a statue? Corey, remember we talked about this with Clint. We've talked about this quite a bit. I think it's pretty obvious it's going to be a lady, and it's probably going to be Ruthie Bolton. I think that one makes the most sense. But there's some good other ones too. It doesn't have to be a coach or a player, or one that was a longtime coach or player. I think the nun, Susan Nunley, and what she's done for women's athletics at Auburn, that might get her a statue, and it would be very deserved, in my opinion. Let's see here. Give them a Buc-ee's coupon or something. Do they give out Buc-ee's coupons? I could put together a Buc-ee's prize package, like go purchase some of their things and throw them in there, like it's a sampling of all the good things. I don't know that I think they've got to give out gift cards. WT, I'm not going to try to embarrass you here, buddy, but does Pat Dye have a statue? Come on, man. Yes. I'll give you a rundown of who's got statues. You got the 3 Heisman. Well, technically on Heisman Row right there, you've got 3 Heismans, right? Cam, Bo, Pat Sullivan, and then there's a bust, meaning a head to shoulders, of John Heisman that sits there. You've also got Barkley outside of the arena. You've got this statue. It's not representing a woman of Auburn, but it's like a representation of women's athletics outside the gymnastics and softball facility that they have for their training. And now you've got Frank Thomas. So the big 3 all have their statues now. It's there's going to be some other ones that come. So I didn't want to embarrass you. You haven't been to Auburn since 1993, but we've been talking about this here, WT. I hope you don't feel like I'm picking on you, but I feel like we've talked about this a lot. Pat Dye has a statue. Got it 2 years ago, right after he passed away, unfortunately. But he knew it was coming, and he was very honored by it. All right, final comments and questions. Drop them in right now. Rapid fire. Don't hesitate. Don't miss it. Let me give you an update. What's coming up here at E2C Network. Our next scheduled live stream, we may do one Tuesday after the baseball game. Miss Angela, we might be doing that right after the baseball game, so keep that in mind. But for now, I want to keep you guys aware that the Auburn Family Night Wednesday night show is live next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern time. Do not miss it. It is a live call-in show. We'll just like this, just hang out and talk about whatever. You can actually, at the very end of this stream, at the end of this video here in a second, it should take you directly over there to the setup preview page, and you can hit the like button. You can go ahead and hit the notify me button, so you'll get a notification when it goes live, and you won't be able to miss it. Other than that, become a subscriber if you haven't to be part of that giveaway. You can be a channel member. You can be a Booster Club member. There's a bunch of other things in the description that you can do to help keep the lights on here at E2C Network and help us continue to bring Auburn Family content to you. We appreciate those of you that can do that. And even if you can't, we appreciate you being here and smashing the like button. And telling a friend. Tell a friend about E2C Network, about social media, about this, all of those things. Any final comments and questions? The last statue I saw was the eagle outside of Beard Eaves. Well, that is now nestled snugly in the center field raised up portion of the Auburn softball field. Last I checked, it was, unless they removed it. I don't think they did. So, yeah, go check that out. You can see it on softball games too. The eagle was unveiled right before the first Auburn-Alabama game in Auburn. It may be true. I mean, I didn't know that. That's pretty cool if that's true. All right, folks. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. Hope you enjoyed the show with Mr. AJ. And we will hopefully have Austin back next Sunday for episode 32. If not, we'll have another special guest here. But I appreciate you guys hanging out with us and spending some time being a part of our little family within the Auburn family. Until I get to talk to you again, War Eagle.